They want you more than they admit, more than they show, more than they'll ever say out loud. But here's the part you don't see. They're not avoiding you because they don't feel anything. They're avoiding you because they feel everything. You are the one person their mind tries to forget and their heart refuses to release. And that tension, that pull, that intensity is exactly why they keep their distance. Because they're crazy about you, but they know they can't handle you. Not fully, not honestly, not in the way you deserve. And that's where this story begins. They don't stay away because they don't care. They stay away because caring about you hurts them in ways they don't know how to manage. You're not just another person to them. You're not a casual crush. You're not a momentary temptation. You are impact. You are intensity. You are emotional gravity. And people don't distance themselves from things they don't want. They distance themselves from things they want too much. They distance themselves from what feels dangerous to their stability, their identity, their internal walls, their coping mechanisms, their carefully controlled life. And you? You are unpredictability to them, not because you're unstable, but because you shake their entire inner structure. You make them feel in a way they've avoided feeling for years. You make them soften in ways that scare them. You make them question every belief they had about connection, closeness, vulnerability, and love. Because when you walk into the room, their defenses collapse without their permission, and that feels dangerous, threatening, uncomfortable, unmanageable, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your presence touches emotional parts of them they've spent their entire life protecting. They're crazy about you, but deep down, they believe they can't have you. Not because you're out of their league, not because they don't desire you, not because they don't imagine you, not because you don't affect them, but because they don't believe they can rise to the version of themselves that someone like you requires. You're not hard to love. You're just hard to love. For someone who hasn't healed, you're hard to love. For someone who isn't ready to be seen, you're hard to love. For someone who loves comfort more than growth, you're hard to love. For someone who has built their life around emotional shortcuts, detachment, and staying surface level, you're not the kind of person they can half love, and they know it. That's the whole point. You expose everything they've been avoiding their suppressed emotions, their internal conflict, their fear of loss, their fear of being fully honest, their fear of showing up imperfect, their fear of being chosen, and failing the person who chooses them. You awaken desires in them that conflict with their habits. You make them want things that require emotional work. You make them crave closeness that demands accountability. You make them imagine a future that terrifies them because it's real, not fantasy, not temporary, not safe in the shallow sense. You make them want depth, and depth is the one thing they've trained themselves to avoid. So they step back, they hesitate, they go quiet, they overthink, they pull away just when the connection gets too real, not because they've lost interest, but because the interest has become overwhelming. To them, you are the person where everything could go right or everything could go wrong. And that scares them more than losing you, more than risking it, more than staying in their feelings. Because you're the one person they can't play safe with. You're the one person they can't lie to convincingly. You're the one person they can't numb themselves against. You slip through every emotional barrier they put up. They look at you, and their heart reacts before their mind approves. They hear your voice, and their defenses soften before they can reinforce them. They think about you and feel more than they allow themselves to feel about anyone else. You're the exception to every emotional rule they've created, and they don't know what to do with that. So instead of leaning in, they retreat. Instead of choosing honesty, they choose distance. Instead of saying what they feel, they avoid the situations that make them feel it. It's not because you're wrong for them. It's because you're the first person who would require them to be right with themselves. You're the first person who challenges their emotional laziness, the first person who exposes their unresolved trauma, the first person whose presence alone asks more of them than they've ever had to give, and not in a demanding way, but in an awakening way. You make them want to be better, but improvement requires effort, and effort requires facing the parts of themselves they've been hiding, and people run from the things that wake them up before they're ready to change. They're crazy about you, but they're terrified that you'll see the parts of them they've spent years covering. You feel like truth, like accountability, like emotional clarity, like the version of love that exposes everything they've survived by avoiding. This isn't rejection, it's fear wrapped in longing. It's desire, in conflict with trauma. It's wanting you, while feeling unworthy of you. It's being pulled toward you and running from you. At the same time, they stay away, not because they don't want you, but because wanting you forces them to face everything they've never healed. And that's the part they don't know how to handle. They want you deeply, desperately, quietly, constantly. They just don't believe they're ready for someone like you. And that belief is what makes them keep their distance. They're crazy about you, but they know they can't have you until they can face themselves. They're crazy about you, but here's the part they never admit. It's not you they're afraid of. It's what you awaken in them. Because when they're around you, something in them softens and sharpens at the same time. Softens because your presence feels safe. Sharpens because that safety exposes everything they've avoided feeling. You are the one person who makes them feel alive in a way they can't hide, control, or shut down. And for someone who has survived life by staying composed, detached, and in control of their emotions, you are a threat to the version of themselves they've been pretending to be. They're crazy about you because you make them feel, but they're terrified because feelings to them have always meant danger. So what do? They keep themselves close enough to feel your energy and distant enough to avoid drowning in it. They flirt with you like they don't care and care for you like they're not flirting. They stay connected, but never committed. They show up, then disappear. The moment connection deepens, they move toward you until they feel themselves falling. Then they pull back so they don't fall too hard, not because they don't want you, but because they want you too much. And desire, to them, has always felt like a loss of control. They're afraid of what wanting you might turn them into, afraid of how deeply you could hurt them if they let you all the way in, afraid that loving you fully would expose how little they know about sustaining love. So they worship you quietly and hide from you loudly. They crave you intensely and suppress it intentionally. They feel you deeply and pretend they don't feel you at all. You've never been the problem. You've been the mirror that reflects the truth. They've never wanted someone as much as they want you. And that's exactly why they think they can't have you. Because wanting you comes with risk. Loving you comes with vulnerability. Choosing you comes with honesty. And they don't trust themselves with any of that. So they convince themselves you're too much, when the truth is you're the first person who ever made them want to grow into more. And growth terrifies people who've only ever survived. This is why they hold you like something precious, but treat you like something temporary. It's not disrespect. It's fear dressed as distance. It's not indifference. It's longing disguised as logic. They're crazy about you, but they genuinely believe you deserve someone more emotionally mature than the version of themselves they're currently trapped in. They don't avoid you because you're unworthy. They avoid you because they feel unprepared, because you move them, because you shake something loose in them, because you bring out parts of them they've never learned to handle. You make them want to show up, but they're afraid they won't show up right. You make them want to be better, but they're afraid they'll still fall short. You make them want love, but they're afraid of losing themselves in it. So they hover in the in-between, close, but not committed, attached, but not available, in love, but in denial. And every time you pull back, thinking you're imagining everything, they panic internally because the thought of losing you hurts more than the fear of wanting you. But still, they don't step forward because in their mind, loving you is a responsibility they don't feel ready for. They think having you would require them to heal, to communicate, to open, to trust, to show up consistently. And that level of emotional truth is something they've never mastered. You are the person they want to be good for, but the person they're afraid they're not good enough to keep. So instead of asking themselves, how can I rise to meet this connection? They tell themselves, I should stay away before I ruin it. It's self-protection disguised as logic, cowardice disguised as caution, longing disguised as detachment. They're crazy about you. That's not the problem. The problem is that you're the first person who makes them feel like love is both within reach and terrifyingly risky. You are the paradox they don't know how to hold, the safest energy they've ever felt, and the most emotionally dangerous connection they've ever faced. That's why they keep you nearby, but never fully close. Why they watch you, but pretend not to care. Why they remember details. They act like they forgot. Why they replay moments they pretend meant nothing. Why they act calm when losing you would wreck them. They want you. They want you more than they admit. But they think wanting you will cost them the identity they've built on emotional self-protection. And that's the inner war they're trapped in. Stay close because they feel something real, or stay distant because real feelings make them vulnerable. This is why they act strange around you. Nervous, quiet, careful, attentive, avoidant, confused. This is what emotional conflict looks like. You think they don't care? No, they care too much. They care so much. They're afraid of losing the version of themselves they've had to become just to survive their past. And you're the first person who makes them question that version. You're the one person who makes love feel possible and therefore terrifying. They're crazy about you. And that is exactly why they believe they can't have you. But here's the quiet truth. Sitting behind everything they do, they don't stay away because they don't want you. They stay away because they want you in a way they don't yet know how to handle. And nothing is more overwhelming to someone emotionally unprepared than a connection that feels destined. They want you more than they admit, more than they show, more than they have the courage to stand in front of. But wanting you and being able to have you are not the same thing. Some people feel the pull of love, but don't have the spine to hold it. Some people feel the fire, but don't know how to stay close to heat without burning themselves. And this person, the one you feel, the one whose energy gives them away, even when their mouth stays quiet, they're in a constant war, a war between what their heart wants and what their fear allows. That's why their behavior feels confusing, why they act close, but never claim you, why they soften, then shut down, why their eyes tell you one truth, but their actions tell you another. They aren't confused about you. They're terrified of themselves because you trigger things in them they spent years avoiding. With you, they can't be numb. With you, they can't be detached. With you, they can't pretend. They don't feel anything. You pull emotions out of them they swore they'd never feel again. You bring out tenderness they buried under sarcasm. You bring out longing they covered with distractions. You bring out vulnerability they locked behind walls. Even they forgot how to open. They can't have you. Not because you're impossible, but because you're too possible, too real, too honest, too powerful, too aligned with the version of themselves they're scared to become, because loving you would require them to step into their own truth, and their truth terrifies them. You see, when someone is used to chaos, stability feels threatening. When someone is used to being overlooked, being chosen feels suspicious. When someone is used to emotional games, real connection feels overwhelming. You don't overwhelm them because you're too much. You overwhelm them because you're different. From every place their wounds once called home, they've never had someone. Look at them like you do. See them like you do. Call out the parts of their heart they treat like a locked room, and they don't know what to do with that. So they hover, stay near, but never land. They talk to you like you're theirs, act around you like you matter, look at you like you're the only person in the room. But when it's time to step up, they freeze. Because wanting you means facing their past, means unlearning their fears, means being accountable to the version of themselves they've avoided becoming. You don't ask for too much. You simply require truth. And truth is what they've been running from. So instead of claiming you, they hold on to you quietly, from the edges, from the shadows, from that safe distance, where they feel close to you, but not exposed to risk. But hear this clearly. Their silence has emotion in it. Their distance has longing in it. Their hesitation has depth in it. People don't retreat from things they don't feel. People retreat from what they feel too deeply, and they feel you deeply. That's why they stay in this strange middle ground. Not gone, but not present. Not choosing someone else, but not choosing you. Not willing to lose you, but terrified to keep you. They know that having you is not something casual, not something halfway, not something they can coast through. You require depth, commitment, healing, courage, consistency, presence. You require a grown soul, not a wounded one hiding behind defenses. And they're scared. They can't be that for you. Scared of disappointing you, scared of failing you, scared of needing you, scared of loving you too much and losing control because you are the one person they can't play games with, the one person they can't fool, the one person whose absence would actually hurt. And that's the problem. They're crazy about you, but you're the one connection. They don't know how to survive losing. So instead of risking it, they keep one foot in and one foot out. But deep down, they know something. People like you don't come twice. People like you don't repeat, don't duplicate, don't reappear. After being taken for granted, you're the rare kind of soul they tell themselves they are not ready for. But the truth is, they're not ready for how much. They would love you if they let themselves. And that's why they hesitate. Because once they choose you, really choose you, there's no going back. Their old life would no longer fit. Their old patterns would no longer work. Their old wounds would no longer hide. You force their heart to grow up. You force their spirit to evolve. You force the child in them to become the man. And some people are terrified of growing into who they're meant to be. So they convince themselves that stepping back is safer, even though it hurts them, even though they feel the distance, even though losing you is the one thing they know they cannot handle. But here's the deeper truth. They think they can manage their feelings. They think they can control the connection. They think they can quiet the longing by staying away. They can't. The more they hold back, the louder their emotions become. The more they try to detach, the more attached they feel. The more they avoid you, the more you live in their mind. Because when someone touches your soul, you can't outrun it. They're realizing that now. They've tried to distract themselves, tried to stay busy, tried to numb it out, tried to convince themselves they don't care as much as they do. But nothing works, because you aren't a feeling they can shake off. You're a shift, a turning point, a moment of awakening, a connection that imprints. You're the person their heart keeps circling back to, no matter what their fear says. And that scares them more than they can admit. Because if they love you, really love you, they know there's no pretending, no hiding, no running, no barriers, just truth. And truth is the one thing they've never learned to sit with. You are the love they hoped for, but didn't prepare for. You are the softness they crave, but don't know how to hold. You are the person they want, but fear they'll lose. That's why they stay away. That's why they hover. That's why they keep you at a distance, while keeping you close enough to feel. It's not rejection. It's not disinterest. It's fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of being known. Fear of being loved in a way that changes them. But mark this down. No one stays away from the one person who makes their soul feel safe. Not forever. Not truly. Distance bends. Walls crack. Fear loses strength. Longing wins. And deep down, they already know you're the one they want. But they're terrified. You're also the one they'll regret losing. They feel you, even when they try not to. They want you, even when they pretend they don't. They crave your presence, even while convincing themselves they should stay far away. Because wanting you is the easy part. Having you is where everything becomes too real. You stir something in them they can't shut off. You bring out softness in someone who's spent a lifetime learning how to be hard. You awaken desires they thought they buried. And that is what terrifies them most. Not losing you, not rejection, not you choosing someone else, but this. What if being with you requires them to be honest in ways they've never been? What if loving you means being seen, all the way down to the parts they never let anyone touch? You think they pull away because they're confused, but they pull away because they're overwhelmed. You're not someone they can casually want. You're someone their soul responds to. And that kind of connection demands courage. They don't know if they have. So they stay near enough to feel you, but far enough to feel safe, close enough to keep you in their world, but distant enough to avoid the depth they don't think they can handle. They're crazy about you. That part is not the problem. The problem is that loving you would require a version of themselves they haven't grown into yet. They're torn because you feel like warmth. You feel like truth. You feel like the first time. They didn't have to pretend. But they also know that once they let themselves fall, there's no going back. So they fight it. They deny it. They try to distract themselves. They tell themselves lies that don't survive the night. And yet, they can't shake you, no matter how long they stay silent, no matter how far they run, no matter how much they pretend they're fine. Because connection like this doesn't disappear, and they know it. That's why they watch you quietly. That's why they listen more than they speak. That's why they hold back feelings that are overflowing. Because deep down, They know this truth. If they had access to you, they'd fall faster than they're ready for. People think the dangerous ones are the ones who chase too hard, but the most dangerous ones are the ones who feel too deeply and hide it too well. And that is exactly who they are. Their silence isn't lack of interest, it's fear of intensity. Their distance isn't rejection, it's emotional overload. Their restraint isn't indifference, it's self protection from a love that feels too real, too powerful, too unstoppable. They know they can't have you, not because you're out of reach, but because they're not ready to rise to the level of love you naturally operate at. And here's the hidden truth: they'll never say. If they ever heal, if they ever grow, if they ever finally face themselves, you're the first person their heart will run toward. Not because you waited, not because you begged, not because you made them feel safe, but because you were the one their soul recognized before their mind did. And that's why they stay close enough to never lose you, but far enough to not risk becoming the person you would actually deserve. They're crazy about you, but they know they can't have you. Not yet, not now, not in the version of themselves they're still hiding from. But the story isn't over. Not with this kind of connection, not with this kind of pull, not with this kind of silent love that refuses to fade. Because people don't forget the person who awakened them. They don't forget the person who made them feel. They don't forget the person who reached a place in them no one else ever touched. And they will never forget you, no matter how far they go, no matter how quietly they act, no matter how hard they pretend. They're unaffected. You are unforgettable to them. And that is what scares them the most. They told themselves they could handle it. They told themselves they could walk away and feel nothing. They told themselves you were just a phase, just a moment, just a comfort they could detach from whenever they wanted. But now their chest tightens every time your name comes to mind. Now their hands shake when they reread old messages they swore they deleted. Now every distraction feels hollow because nothing fills the space you once filled effortlessly. They didn't expect this. They didn't expect you to be the one person their mind keeps circling back to, even when they're trying to forget. They didn't expect your absence to echo louder than your presence ever did. And they definitely didn't expect that losing you would feel like losing the one thing in their life that ever made sense. Because you weren't chaos. You were calm. You weren't drama. You were grounding. You weren't noise. You were that quiet warmth they didn't know was missing until it was gone. And now they're realizing the truth they denied from the start. They never had control over their feelings for you. They only had control over their denial. And denial is cracking, piece by piece, memory by memory, moment by moment. Every time they lie in bed at night, in that silent hour, when nothing distracts them from themselves, that's when you return. Not physically, emotionally, energetically, unavoidably. They see you in the things that once annoyed them, but now they miss. Your voice echoes in their mind, in all the places where confusion used to live. Your softness haunts them, in the way their new connections feel shallow in comparison. Your absence hurts, in the way their ego never saw coming. Because here's what they never understood. Until now, you weren't replaceable. Not because you tried to be unforgettable, but because you were genuine. In a world where people perform, you were consistent. In a world where people switch emotions like outfits, you were depth. In a world full of shallow connections, you were real. And real stays, even when you're gone, especially when you're gone. And that is why they're unraveling now. not because you hurt them, but because you healed them in ways they didn't know they needed. And now they're left with a version of themselves they don't know how to manage. They crave your steadiness, your insight, your warmth, your presence that made them feel seen without ever trying. But now you're not around to make them feel safe from themselves. Now they face everything. You softened inside them. And the wildest part? The moment they truly break is not when they recall the good memories. It's when they remember how you looked at them when you were disappointed. Because nothing cuts deeper than realizing they weren't pushed away. They walked away from the one person who genuinely cared. And now they feel it. The shift, the loss, the absence, the consequences. Because now they hear things like, "You seem off lately. You're quieter these days. You don't look like yourself." And they want to say, "I lost something I didn't realize I needed until it was gone. I let go of someone I should have held on to. I ruined the safest connection I ever had." But pride keeps their mouth shut, and fear keeps their heart frozen. Because to admit they miss you is to admit they were wrong, to admit they mishandled you, to admit they underestimated how deeply you affected them. And that kind of honesty feels too raw for someone who always wanted to seem unbothered. But here's the truth. They are bothered. They are triggered. They are shaken. Not because you left, but because you grew into someone they no longer have access to. You're glowing now, healing now, expanding now, and they feel small next to the person you've become. That's why they're obsessed quietly. That's why they watch from a distance. That's why they replay every moment and wonder how they lost you. Because it's only now they understand. You weren't chasing them. You weren't needing them. You weren't clinging to them. You were choosing them voluntarily, wholeheartedly, freely. And now that your choice is gone, they realize what a privilege it was to be chosen by you at all. Nothing hurts more deeply than recognizing you were loved in a way you didn't appreciate until it slipped away silently. Now they sit with the one fear they can't outrun anymore, that you've finally healed past them, that someone else will see your worth and never take it for granted. That someone else will get the version of you they were too immature to handle. And the reality hits them. They're no longer afraid of losing you. They're afraid they already have. And that realization breaks them in a way they'll never admit. Because the truth is simple. They're crazy about you. They know they can't have you. But what hurts the most is knowing someone else will.